on Canberra Live with Marcus Paul. Legal advice from Blumer's Lawyers.
And I'm very happy to say that Noor Blumer joins me this afternoon. Hello.
Hello, Marcus.
It's nice to see you.
Yes, it's our first time together, I think.
Well, it is, and I'm very excited about it. Now, let's get stuck into, I guess, something that a lot of people, unfortunately, have to get into. It is family law and divorce. Now, increasingly, there are more and more divorced grandparents in Australia.
Yes.
And there's been
that's not from each other either.
No, that's right. I know that old-fashioned values. They stay together. But look, there's been a recent story, I believe, where I understand that grandparents are trying to seek legal access to their grandchildren. So what rights do grandparents have to see their grandkids?
They've got a pretty good chance, actually. There's been a lot of cases over the years, plus there's been changes to the law to make sure that grandparents don't lose contact with their grandchildren. Sometimes grandparents might, say, fall out with their own child, and they still want to have a relationship with the grandchildren. And what the courts recognise is that it's really important for children to have a relationship not just with their own parents and their siblings, but with their wider family.
Yep.
And they'll do everything they can to encourage that. So, and other cases might be where, let's say, your child has died, but their children are still alive, and you know, things can be arranged. Not necessarily always at the grandparents' convenience, but then that's the grandparents' lot in life. We don't.
That's true.
Yeah,
I mean, it's important. I unfortunately am one of these statistics. I'm divorced, but my parents have, as do I, have just unlimited access to our two boys.
Yes, and that's the way it should be.
And you're right, that is the way it should be, because, the grandparents, like the father and like the mother, also, play a major role in the development of the children. And it's just unfortunate, and having gone through the process, fortunately coming out the other side of it without too much of without too many issues. But gee whiz, I hated being in the family court system. We were just doing everything via consent, but some of the stories that people
some of the stories are frightening.
Yeah.
And just to bear in mind too that now that grandparents are specifically mentioned in the Family Law Act, it means that they do have to, for instance, try and reach agreement like in any other case, and they'll also probably be subject to some mediation, and they'll have to certify that. Now, mediation can be a difficult process, but it can be also a very rewarding one. And anything that in the law, anything that you can get people to agree to rather than have a judge shove upon them, so to speak, is always better, because it's never ideal, but at least the people have got some ownership of the end result. So grandparents, you don't have a right to run their lives, but your grandchildren, and you don't have a right particularly to see your grandchildren, but your grandchildren sure as hell have a right to see you.
Well,
so
absolutely. And this is the thing, and I'm going to put it out there because, and I do get sick and tired of seeing it on social media sites. And what you see a lot of the time is, blah, 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 won't spend time with his kids, I need some time out, I need a break, I need a... But you know these people, and you have learnt through various channels that the grandparents
are dying to have it.
Would love the kids for the weekends.
Love to.
You want to go out on a Saturday night?
Yeah.
Organise something with the grandparents.
So
it's unfortunate.
If you split up with somebody, all right, you'll have your reasons, but don't take it out on the grandparents or on your children, who should have as many people. It's when they get to teenagers, I think, that when they're really in trouble, it's better that they've got lots of people to turn to.
Absolutely. And, for advice, because at the end of the day, it's the parent, as you say. It's
parents are always the best people.
Well, and the parents are the ones with the problems, not the grandparents,
right.
and not the children, and quite often they are the victims in all of it. Now, if you've got an issue regarding this and you'd like to just ask some advice from Noor this afternoon, feel free to give us a call, 6255 1206. That's what we're in here for. Now, I thought we'd also just talk a little bit today about sentencing. Now,
yes.
I understand that a career criminal's been sentenced to another 12 months in Canberra's jail for starting a fire in his cell. Meanwhile, another woman who used her 8-year-old neighbour as a photographer in explicit photo shoots will not serve time behind bars. Now, what exactly do the courts take into account during sentencing? Because we hear of all these stories and all these campaigns about light sentences here, and why didn't that person receive jail time? Why did they receive this sentence which has been suspended? So what do they really look at ultimately?
Look, there's some real basics that they look at, and of course the newspapers don't always report the whole story or even know the whole story. But what happens is somebody pleads guilty or they're found guilty of offence, and there's certain things that can be taken into account and certain things that can't actually as well. But let's go back to the nature and circumstances of the offence. So let's say it's a relatively minor offence. Well, it shouldn't be a major jail sentence, for instance.
No.
And vice versa.
Well,
if it's a
just
serious...
on that, because I don't know whether you heard it before, but I had the Attorney General on the
Yes,
phone.
I did hear most of it, yes.
And we were talking about restorative justice, where
Yes.
they're looking at getting victims of crime and the offenders together in a kind of mediation system, which ultimately could lead to more remorse for the offender to understand what the crime is that they've done, and that could then lead to the offender not serving jail time.
Oh, look, I think there's a lot to be said for restorative justice. It's not something I'm an expert in because we haven't had that so much in the Territory, but it's certainly something that's been trialled elsewhere, and it's good to see that they're looking at it here. You know, we've got a falling crime rate here. I mean, it falls and falls. Everybody's like, oh, you know, look, justice and this and that, but... we have got a falling crime
Canberra's
rate.
pretty safe.
It is pretty good, and compared to years ago, all over Australia, there's been falling crime rates for years. So leaving that aside, so that one thing you mentioned, remorse.
Yep.
Remorse is taken into account. If the judge thinks that the person really actually feels bad about it, and that's where that restorative mediation could come into account,
Yep.
then they can take that into account.
Okay.
Because if somebody feels really bad about what they've done, they're less likely to do it again.
Of course.
And they're already suffering, so there's that.
So why prolong that?
Exactly. And another thing is other offences. So let's say it turns out they've got a huge criminal record. Well, they have to take that into account. Of course they do. They're not allowed to take it into account whether or not you find somebody guilty. So that's usually hidden away unless there's a thing called a course of conduct, which is something else.
Yep.
So that's important. If you've got a long history and you're a repeat offender, it's going to get more and more serious every time. Your personal circumstances. Now, in this one with the woman had the 8-year-old take explicit photographs of her, it seems like it was a very, very sad tale of her life of being abused and suffering violence.
So there were extenuating
She's obviously a person who, and of course mental health is taken into account.
Yeah.
So if you're a person that's mentally ill, that you're treated differently in sentencing and
because
in the
they
law.
can deal with offences under the Mental Health Act.
Well, that's the guilty, or they can. So that's another way of dealing with the offence. But as to sentencing, if you have been found guilty, notwithstanding your mental capacity, at the same time you can still say, well, look, you're suffering from severe depression or some sort of illness that contributed and that would be really badly affected, for instance, by a custodial sentence. Another sort of thing is a physical disability. So let's say you're a quadriplegic. I mean, it's going to be difficult for them to find a place to put you in jail. So all of these things are taken into account, and if they've tried to make some reparation for the injury or loss, compensate people, whether they've complied with all their bail conditions and so forth, whether they're likely to offend again, the deterrent effect, and to make sure that the community feels that they're adequately punished. Age, youth, all those things. So we just get a little bit in the newspaper or on the telly or on the radio.
We never get the full story.
No, and sometimes...
Get bites.
Sometimes the journalists, in fairness, haven't seen everything, or it's been not available to them, or they haven't looked at it.
Yep.
But in every case where there's a possibility of a custodial sentence, the judge or magistrate will ask for a pre-sentence report, and a person from probation and whatever they call it will actually examine them, talk to their doctors, talk to their family, see about their work situation, like if someone,
So okay,
lots of stuff.
Some good points there. We'll take a break and we'll come back. If you have a question for Noor, make sure you give us a call. We're speaking to Noor Blumer from Blumer's Lawyers here on Canberra Live this afternoon about the law. The number is 6255 1206.
Hi, this is Luke Boner.
you over there at the Majura Parkway. But right now we're talking the law.
On Canberra Live with Marcus Paul, legal advice from Blumer's Lawyers.
And Noor Blumer joins us in the studio. I wanted to touch base about the ACCC. Now, we've heard during the week that they've instituted proceedings in the federal court against Coles. They're alleging unconscionable conduct with around 200 small grocery suppliers. What could this be about?
Well, you know, the Australian Competition and Consumer Law, which used to be the old Trade Practices Act, is there to protect little people against the actions of corporations such as Coles.
Yep.
Now, they're obviously alleging that the kinds of deals they're making their providers, their wholesalers pay, or their producers of goods, aren't fair and are really squeezing them, because being a major part of the market, I mean, if Coles isn't taking your produce, you're in trouble.
Sure.
Or Woolworths or Aldi.
So that Coles, Woolies, perhaps, and obviously this is just, we're talking about the issue. Could it be a situation where Coles and Woolies are paying a price for the produce that the smaller independents can't afford to pay?
Yeah, well, in fact, what they're saying is not only that, they're actually keeping the price at a certain level, but then making the suppliers pay them some sort of rebate according to this.
Okay.
I don't understand how that works, and it's obviously been unusual enough to draw the attention of the ACCC, who don't go in lightly. Having said that, they don't always win their cases either. So so the ACCC action says there's a detailed supply chain. It's a very Coles says it's a very complicated situation. Our deals with our suppliers is very complicated, and therefore you can't just pull out one bit and say, oh, look, you know, that bit of it's bad. Remember, for listeners, as consumers, we do want the cheapest prices.
Yep.
But actually, we don't want our producers being squeezed. We don't want them going broke. We don't want them selling out to in overseas companies. We want to keep them, like with SPC and so forth.
Yep.
And once people realised they were in trouble, they started buying their tinned fruit again. You know, all of these things happen.
Dick Smith has had a big campaign against this as well.
Absolutely.
He's felt squeezed by the big supermarkets, and I guess it's a situation of when they have that clout that I guess within the market space,
they have to respect it. They have to respect it,
and perhaps that's what's not happening.
Well, they're alleging that it's not happening, and they're alleging that it's unfair and unconscionable, and we'll see how they go with it, because it's always a big task.
It's certainly going to be interesting to see what happens. I wish they would then move on to petrol.
I was just about to say, petrol's a classic example,
particularly here in the nation's capital. All right, quick break, and we're back with Noor Blumer. We're talking the law this afternoon with Blumer's Lawyers here on Canberra Live.
This is Canberra Live with Marcus Paul, thanks to Blumer's Lawyers, 1206.
2CC.
It's 6 to 4, and I'm with Noor Blumer this afternoon, talking to the boss here about the law. I understand Law Week is on next week. That must, do you all get together and drink a bit and have a good old time?
It's just a lawyer-a-thon, but we do have a good time. Well, we find it exciting.
I'm playing. I haven't gone out my lawyer jokes yet.
That's all right.
I don't know you
I've probably heard them all. I'll get out my shock jokes. Then you'll be sorry.
I think, you know what, Noor, I have to say, I think you'd be a far better lawyer than I would be a shock jock. Let me tell you that right now.
Well, perhaps we'll swap.
I'm outraged. All right, so Law Week, what's happening?
Oh, well, the first thing is that I always like is that it's a great week to find out about wills. You know how everybody wants to know about wills and powers of attorney?
Of course.
So all of you out there, I know, are interested in that, and you can have some free sessions with some people that really know about it. The Law Society's got lots of committees, and one of the committees is the Elder Law Committee.
Okay.
And they really do a great job with elder law, and they're going to be giving sessions out at Greenway at Tuggeranong and also at Gungahlin next week. So,
excuse my ignorance. Elder law is law for
elderly.
people.
Sorry,
Thanks. That's fine.
Sounds like El Dorado, doesn't it?
So it's
elder.
Yeah, and that's
law.
That's
That's law for elder people.
It's good that committee exists because a lot of older people, are a little frightened by the law. Excellent. Okay.
Plus, we have a lot of old lawyers as well. That's all right. So they'll be giving those sessions and explain the importance of having a current will and a power of attorney. Often asked questions about that, so that's a really good chance to look at that. Apparently, about 1.2 million Australians aged over 50 don't have a will.
Wow, that many?
That's over 50, and for over 25, it's over 5 million. So you really need to know. I mean, there are situations where people don't need a will because the way it will go is fairly simple, but I actually think it's just better to have one anyway. It makes it clearer. People don't have to spend all that time looking to see if you made one or not, because that's one of the problems. Yep. And you get people like Robert Holmes the Court, when he died about 20 years ago. He hadn't made a will.
And you get all the squabbling after.
Really squabbling. You don't want that happening.
Absolutely not.
And if they are going to squabble, they should be squabbling over what you want, not what they want.
Okay, so what we might do is we might put up a link somewhere to this.
To the Law Society website, and you can say that you want to go to any of those sessions.
You have to book. That's the important thing.
You have to book. Now, all of our events are open to non-members. The launch and the Golden Gavel and various talks and so forth. Go to the Law Society website and you'll see everything we have on.
It's nice for you to join us today. Nice to see you.
Marcus.
And I look forward to catching up with you.
See you soon, in a couple of weeks.
Yeah. Excellent. Okay, thank you. That's Noor Blumer there from Blumer's Lawyers here on Canberra Live. We're coming up to news time at 4.